Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
ओमज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनित्य नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामने गौरतुषे नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life, and Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life, that is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti or liberation means freedom from material consciousness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hitvanyatha rupam swarupena vyavasthita. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. All the instructions of Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness, and therefore we find at the last stage of the Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is an affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. What is this consciousness? This consciousness is I am. Then what am I? In contaminated consciousness, I am means I am the Lord of all I survey. I am the enjoyer. The world revolves because every living being thinks that he is the Lord and creator of the material world. Material consciousness has two psychic divisions. One is that I am the creator, and the other is that I am the enjoyer. But actually, the Supreme Lord is both the creator and the enjoyer. And the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is neither the creator nor the enjoyer, but a cooperator. He is the created and the enjoyed. For instance, a part of a machine cooperates with the whole machine. A part of the body cooperates with the whole body. The hands, legs, eyes, and so on are all parts of the body, but they are not actually the enjoyers. The stomach is the enjoyer. The legs move, the hands supply food, the teeth chew, and all parts of the body are engaged in satisfying the stomach. Because the stomach is the principal factor that nourishes the body's organization, therefore everything is given to the stomach. One nourishes the tree by watering its root, and one nourishes the body by feeding the stomach. For if the body is to be kept in a healthy state, then the parts of the body must cooperate to feed the stomach. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer and the creator, and we, as subordinate living beings, are meant to cooperate to satisfy Him. This cooperation will actually help us, just as food taken by the stomach will help all other parts of the body. If the fingers of the hand think that they should take the food themselves instead of giving it to the stomach, then they will be frustrated. The central figure of creation and of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, and the living entities are cooperators. By cooperation, they enjoy. The relation is also like that of the master and the servant. If the master is fully satisfied, then the servant is satisfied. Similarly, the Supreme Lord should be satisfied. Although the tendency to become the creator and the tendency to enjoy the material world are there also in the living entities, because these tendencies are there in the Supreme Lord who has created the manifested cosmic world. We shall find therefore in this Bhagavad Gita that the complete whole is comprised of the Supreme Controller. The controlled living entities, the cosmic manifestation, eternal time and karma or activities, and all of this are explained in this text. All of this taken completely form the complete whole, and the complete whole is called the Supreme Absolute Truth. The complete whole and the complete absolute truth are the complete personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. All manifestations are due to His different energies. He is the complete whole. It is also explained in the Gita that impersonal Brahman is also subordinate to the complete Supreme Person. Brahmano hi pratishtatam. Brahman is more explicitly explained in the Brahma Sutra to be like the rays of the sunshine. The impersonal Brahman is the shining rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is in complete realization of the absolute whole, and so also is the conception of Paramatma. In the 15th chapter, it shall be seen that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama, is above both impersonal Brahman and the partial realization of Paramatma. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Satchidananda Vigraha. The Brahma Samhita begins in this way. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidanand Vigraha Anadir Adir Govindah Sarva Karana Karanam. Govinda Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is the primal cause and he is the very form of eternity, knowledge and bliss. Impersonal Brahman realization is the realization of his Sat eternity feature. Paramatma realization is the realization of Satchit eternal knowledge. But realization of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is realization of all the transcendental features, Satchit and Anand. Eternity, knowledge and bliss in complete Vigraha form. People with less intelligence consider the supreme truth to be impersonal, but he is a transcendental person, and this is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. As we are all individual living beings and have our individuality, the supreme absolute truth is also in the ultimate issue a person, and the realization of the personality of Godhead is realization of all of the transcendental features in his complete form. The complete whole is not formless. If he is formless, or if he is less than any other thing, then he cannot be the complete whole. The complete whole must have everything within our experience, and beyond our experience. Otherwise, it cannot be complete. The complete whole, the personality of Godhead, has immense potencies. Parashya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. How Krishna is acting in different potencies is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. This phenomenal world or material world in which we are placed is also complete in itself, because the 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation, according to Sankhya philosophy, are completely adjusted to produce complete resources which are necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. There is nothing extraneous, nor is there anything needed. This manifestation has its own time fixed by the energy of the Supreme Whole, and when its time is complete, these temporary manifestations will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete. This complete facility for the small complete units, namely the living entities, to realize the complete, and all sorts of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete. So Bhagavad Gita contains the complete knowledge of Vedic wisdom. All Vedic knowledge is infallible, and Hindus accept Vedic knowledge to be complete and infallible. For example, cow dung is the stool of an animal, and according to Smriti or Vedic injunction, if one touches the stool of an animal, he has to take a bath to purify himself. But in the Vedic scriptures, cow dung is considered to be a purifying agent. One might consider this to be contradictory, but it is accepted because it is Vedic injunction. And indeed, by accepting this, one will not commit a mistake. Subsequently, it has been proved by modern science that cow dung contains all antiseptic properties. So Vedic knowledge is complete because it is above all doubts and mistakes. And Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Our research work is imperfect because we are researching things with imperfect senses. We have to accept perfect knowledge, which comes down, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, by the parampara, disciplic succession. We have to receive knowledge from the proper source in disciplic succession, beginning with the Supreme Spiritual Master, the Lord Himself, and handed down to a succession of spiritual masters. Arjuna, the student who took lessons from Lord Sri Krishna, accepts everything that he says without contradicting him. One is not allowed to accept one portion of Bhagavad Gita and not another. No, we must accept Bhagavad Gita without interpretation, without deletion, and without our own whimsical participation in the matter. The Gita should be taken as the most perfect presentation of Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is received from transcendental sources, and the first words were spoken by the Lord Himself. The words spoken by the Lord are called Apaurushya, meaning that they are different from words spoken by a person of the mundane world who is infected with 4 defects. A mundaner, 1, is sure to commit mistakes, 2, is invariably illusioned, 3, has the tendency to cheat others, and 4, is limited by imperfect senses. With these 4 imperfections, one cannot deliver perfect information of all pervading knowledge. Vedic knowledge is not imparted by such defective living entities. It was imparted unto the heart of Brahma, the first created living being. And Brahma in his turn disseminated this knowledge to his sons and disciples as he originally received it from the Lord. The Lord is Purnam, all perfect, and there is no possibility of his becoming subjected to the laws of material nature. One should therefore be intelligent enough to know that the Lord is the only proprietor of everything in the universe, and that He is the original creator, the creator of Brahma. In the 11th chapter, the Lord is addressed as Prapitamaha because Brahma is addressed as Pitamaha, the grandfather, and he is the creator of the grandfather. So no one should claim to be the proprietor of anything. One should accept only things set aside for him by the Lord as his quota for his maintenance. There are many examples given of how we are to utilize those things which are set aside for us by the Lord. This is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. In the beginning, Arjuna decided that he should not fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. This was his own decision. Arjun told the Lord that it was not possible for him to enjoy the kingdom after killing his own kinsmen. This decision was based on the body because he was thinking that the body was himself and that his bodily relations or expansions were his brothers, nephews, brothers-in-law, grandfathers, and so on. Therefore, he wanted to satisfy his bodily demands. Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord just to change this view. And at the end, Arjuna decided to fight under the directions of the Lord when he says,
Karishye vachanam tava.
I shall act according to your word. In this world, men are not meant for quarreling like cats and dogs. Men must be intelligent to realize the importance of human life and refuse to act like ordinary animals. A human being should realize the aim of his life, and this direction is given in all Vedic literatures. And the essence is given in Bhagavad Gita. Vedic literature is meant for human beings, not for animals. Animals can kill other living animals, and there is no question of sin on their part. But if a man kills an animal for the satisfaction of his uncontrolled taste, he must be responsible for breaking the laws of nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly explained that there are three kinds of activities according to the different modes of nature: the activities of goodness, of passion, and of ignorance. Similarly, there are three kinds of eatables also: eatables in goodness, passion, and ignorance. All of this is clearly described, and if we properly utilize the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, then our whole life will become purified and ultimately will be able to reach the destination which is beyond this material sky. Yat katva na nivaradante tat dharma paramam mama. That destination is called Sanatana sky, the eternal spiritual sky. In this material world, we find that everything is temporary. It comes into being, stays for some time, produces some byproducts, dwindles, and then vanishes. That is the law of the material world. Whether we use as an example this body or a piece of fruit or anything, but beyond this temporary world, there is another world of which we have information. That world consists of another nature, which is Sanatan, eternal. The Jiva is also described as Sanatan, eternal, and the Lord is also described as Sanatan in the 11th chapter. We have an intimate relationship with the Lord, and because we are all qualitatively one, the Sanatan Dhamma or sky, the Sanatan Supreme Personality, and the Sanatan living entities. The whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to revive our Sanatana occupation or Sanatan Dharma, which is the eternal occupation of the living entity. We are temporarily engaged in different activities, but all of these activities can be purified when we give up all these temporary activities and take up the activities which are prescribed by the Supreme Lord. That is called our pure life. The Supreme Lord and his transcendental abode are both Sanatan, as are the living entities, and the combined association of the Supreme Lord and the living entities in the Sanatan abode is the perfection of human life. The Lord is very kind to the living entities because they are his sons. Lord Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Yonishu Aham Bija Pradhapita. I am the father of all. Of course, there are all types of living entities according to their various karmas, but here the Lord claims that he is the father of all of them. Therefore, the Lord descends to reclaim all of these fallen, conditioned souls, to call them back to the Sanatan eternal sky, so that the Sanatan living entities may regain their eternal Sanatan positions in eternal association with the Lord. The Lord comes himself in different incarnations, or he sends his confidential servants as sons of his associates or acharyas to reclaim the conditioned souls. Therefore, Sanatan Dharma does not refer to any sectarian process of religion. It is the eternal function of the eternal living entities in relationship with the eternal Supreme Lord. Sanatan Dharma refers, as stated previously, to the eternal occupation of the living entity. Sripada Ramanujacharya has explained the word Sanatan as that which has neither beginning nor end. So when we speak of Sanatan Dharma, we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripada Ramanujacharya that it has neither beginning nor end. The English word religion is a little different from Sanatan Dharma. Religion conveys the idea of faith, and faith may change. One may have faith in a particular process and he may change his faith and adopt another. But Sanatan Dharma refers to that activity which cannot be changed. For instance, liquidity cannot be taken from water, nor can heat be taken from fire. Similarly, the eternal function of the eternal living entity cannot be taken from the living entity.
Sanatan Dharma is eternally integral with the living entity.
When we speak of Sanatan Dharma, therefore, we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripada Ramanujacharya that it has neither beginning nor end. That which has neither end nor beginning,
Must not be
for
sectarian.
it cannot be limited by any boundaries. Those belonging to some sectarian faith will wrongly consider that Sanatan Dharma is also sectarian. But if we go deeply into the matter and consider it in the light of modern science, it is possible for us to see that Sanatan Dharma is the business of all the people of the world, nay, of all living entities of the universe. Non-Sanatan religious faiths may have some beginning in the annals of human history, but there is no beginning to the history of Sanatan Dharma because it remains eternally within the living entities. Insofar as the living entities are concerned, the authoritative Shastras state that the living entity has neither birth nor death. In the Gita, it is stated that the living entity is never born and he never dies. He is eternal and indestructible, and he continues to live after the destruction of his temporary material body. In reference to the concept of Sanatan Dharma, we must try to understand the concept of religion from the Sanskrit root meaning of the word. Dharma refers to that which is constantly existing within a particular object. We conclude that there is heat and light along with the fire. Without heat and light, there is no meaning to the word fire. Similarly, we must discover the essential part of the living being, that part which is his constant companion. That constant companion is his eternal quality, and that eternal quality is his eternal religion. When Sanatan Goswami asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the Swarup of every living being, the Lord replied that the Swarupa or constitutional position of the living being is the rendering of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we analyze this statement of Lord Chaitanya's, we can easily see that every living being is constantly engaged in rendering service to another living being. A living being serves other living beings in various capacities. By doing so, the living entity enjoys life. The lower animals serve human beings as servants serve their master. A serves B master, B serves C master, and C serves D master, and so on. Under the circumstances, we can see that one friend serves another friend. The mother serves the son, the wife serves the husband serves the wife, and so on. If we go on searching in this spirit, it will be seen that there is no exception in the society of living beings to the activity of service. The politician presents his manifesto for the public to convince them of his capacity for service. The voters therefore give the politician their valuable votes, thinking that he will render valuable service to society. The shopkeeper serves the customer and the artisan serves the capitalist. The capitalist serves the family and the family serves the state in the terms of the eternal capacity of the eternal living being. In this way, we can see that no living being is exempt from rendering service to other living beings, and therefore we can safely conclude that service is the constant companion of the living being, and that the rendering of service is the eternal religion of the living being. Yet man professes to belong to a particular type of faith with reference to particular time and circumstance, and thus claims to be a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or an adherent of any other sect. Such designations are non-Sanatan Dharma. A Hindu may change his faith to become a Muslim, or a Muslim may change his faith to become a Hindu, or a Christian may change his faith, and so on. But in all circumstances, the change of religious faith does not affect the eternal occupation of rendering service to others. The Hindu, Muslim, or Christian, in all circumstances, is a servant of someone. Thus, to profess a particular type of faith is not to profess one's Sanatan Dharma. The rendering of service is Sanatan Dharma. Factually, we are related to the Supreme Lord in service. The Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and we living entities are His servitors. We are created for His enjoyment, and if we participate in that eternal enjoyment with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we become happy. We cannot become happy otherwise. It is not possible to be happy independently, just as no one part of the body can be happy without cooperating with the stomach. It is not possible for the living entity to be happy without rendering transcendental loving service unto the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, worship of different demigods or rendering service to them is not approved. It is stated in the 7th chapter, 20th verse, Kamaistai rita jnanah prapadyante nya devata tam niyamam asthaya prakrite niyatah swaya. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Here it is plainly said that those who are directed by lust worship the demigods and not the Supreme Lord Krishna. When we mention the name Krishna, we do not refer to any sectarian name. Krishna means the highest pleasure, and it is confirmed that the Supreme Lord is the reservoir or storehouse of all pleasure. We are all hankering after pleasure. Ananda Mayo Bhyasat, Vedanta Sutra 1.1.12. The living entities like the Lord are full of consciousness and their after happiness. The Lord is perpetually happy, and the living entities associate with the Lord, cooperate with Him, and take part in His association, then they also become happy. The Lord descends to this mortal world to show His pastimes in Vrindavan, which are full of happiness. When Lord Sri Krishna was in Vrindavan, His activities with His cowherd boyfriends, with His damsel friends, with the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, and with the cows were all full of happiness. The total population of Vrindavan knew nothing but Krishna. But Lord Krishna even discouraged his father Nanda Maharaj from worshipping the demigod Indra because he wanted to establish the fact that people need not worship any demigod. They need only worship the Supreme Lord because their ultimate goal is to return to His abode. The abode of Lord Sri Krishna is described in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, 6th verse. Na tad bhajayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mamo. That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. This verse gives a description of the eternal sky. Of course, we have a material conception of the sky, and we think of it in relationship to the sun, moon, stars, and so on. But in this verse, the Lord states that in the eternal sky, there is no need for the sun, nor for the moon, nor electricity or fire of any kind, because the spiritual sky is already illuminated by the Brahma Jyoti, the rays emanating from the Supreme Lord. We are trying with difficulty to reach other planets, but it is not difficult to understand the abode of the Supreme Lord. This abode is referred to as Golaka. In the Brahma Samhita 5.37, it is beautifully described. Golak eva nivasati akhilatma bhutah. The Lord resides eternally in His abode Golak, yet He can be approached from this world, and to this end, the Lord comes to manifest His real form, Satchidananda Vigraha. When He manifests this form, there is no need for our imagining what He looks like. To discourage such imaginative speculation, He descends and exhibits Himself as He is, as Shyam Sundar. Unfortunately, the less intelligent deride Him because He comes as one of us and plays with us as a human being. But because of this, we should not consider the Lord one of us. It is by His omnipotency that He presents Himself in His real form before us and displays His pastimes, which are replicas of those pastimes found in His abode. In the effulgent rays of the spiritual sky, there are innumerable planets floating. The Brahmajyoti emanates from the supreme abode, Krishnalok, and the Anandamaya, Chinmaya planets, which are not material, float in those rays. The Lord says, Na tad bhashayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yad gatva na nirvatante tad dhama paramam mama. One who can approach that spiritual sky is not required to descend again to the material sky. In the material sky, when we approach the highest planet, Brahmalok, what to speak of the moon, we will find the same conditions of life, namely birth, death, disease, and old age. No planet in this material universe is free from these four principles of material existence. The living entities are traveling from one planet to another, but it is not that we can go to any planet. We light merely by a mechanical arrangement. If we desire to go to other planets, there is a process for going there. This is also mentioned. Yanti Deva Vrata, Devan Pritrin, Yanti Pitra Vrata. No mechanical arrangement is necessary if we want interplanetary travel. The Gita instructs, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. The moon, the sun, and the high planets are called Swargalok. There are three different statuses of planets: higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. The Earth belongs to the middle planetary system. Bhagavad Gita informs us how to travel to the higher planetary systems, Devlok, with a very simple formula. Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. One need only worship that particular demigod of that particular planet, and in that way go to the moon, the sun, or any of the higher planetary systems. Yet Bhagavad Gita does not advise us to go to any of the planets in this material world, because even if we go to Brahmalok, the highest planet, through some sort of mechanical contrivance, by maybe traveling for 40,000 years, and who would live that long? And we will still find the material inconveniences of birth, death, disease, and old age. But one who wants to approach the supreme planet Krishnalok or any other planet within the spiritual sky will not meet with this material inconveniences. Amongst all of the planets in the spiritual sky, there is one supreme planet called Golak Vrindavan, the original planet in the abode of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. All of this information is given in Bhagavad Gita, and we are given through its instruction information how to leave the material world and begin a truly blissful life in the spiritual sky. In the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the real picture of the material world is given. It is said there, Urdhava Moolam Adha Shakum Ashvatham Prahur Avyayam Chandamsi Yashya Parnani Yasam Veda Shavedavit. Here the material world is described as a tree whose roots are upwards and branches are below. We had experience of a tree whose roots are upward. If one stands on the bank of a river or any reservoir of water, he can see that the trees reflected in the water are upside down. The branches go downward and the roots upward. Similarly, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. The material world is but a shadow of reality. In the shadow there is no reality or substantiality. But from the shadow we can understand that there are substance and reality. In the desert there is no water, but the mirage suggests that there is such a thing as water. In the material world there is no water, there is no happiness, but the real water of actual happiness is there in the spiritual world. The Lord suggests that we attain the spiritual world in the following manner. BG 15.5 Nirmana Moha Jitashanga Dosha Adhyatma Nitya Vinivritta Kama Dvandvaiver Vimukta Sukha Dukha Samagyar Gachanti Amudaha Padam Avyayam Tat. That Padam Avyayam or eternal kingdom can be reached by one who is Nirmana Moha. What does this mean? We are after designations. Someone wants to become Sir, someone wants to become Lord, someone wants to become the president or a rich man or a king or something else. As long as we are attached to these designations, we are attached to the body. because designations belong to the body, but we are not these bodies. And realizing this is the first stage in spiritual realization. We are associated with the three modes of material nature, but we must become detached through devotional service to the Lord. If we are not detached to devotional service to the Lord, then we cannot become detached from the modes of material nature. Designations and attachments are due to our lust and desire, our wanting to lord it over the material nature. As long as we do not give up this propensity of lording it over material nature, there is no possibility of returning to the kingdom of the Supreme. So the Sanatan Dhamma, that eternal kingdom which is never destroyed, can be approached by one who is not bewildered by the attractions of false material enjoyments, who is situated in the service of the Supreme Lord. One so situated can easily approach that supreme abode. Elsewhere in the Gita 8.21 it is stated, Avyakto Shara iti uktas tam ahu paramam gatim yam prapya na nirvatante tad dhama paramam mama. Avyakta means unmanifested. Not even all of the material world is manifested before us. Our senses are so imperfect that we cannot even see all of the stars within this material universe. In the Vedic literature, we can receive much information about all the planets, and we can believe it or not believe it. All of the important planets are described in all the Vedic literatures, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, and the spiritual world, which is beyond this material sky, is described as avyakta, unmanifested. One should desire and hanker after that supreme kingdom, for when one attains that kingdom, he does not have to return to this material world. Next, one may raise the question of how one goes about approaching that abode of the Supreme Lord. Information of this is given in the 8th chapter. It is said there, Antakale cha mam eva smaran muktava kalvaram yaha prayati samadbhavam yati nashyate atra samshaya. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. BG 8.5. One who thinks of Krishna at the time of his death goes to Krishna. One must remember the form of Krishna. If he quits his body thinking of this form, he surely approaches the spiritual kingdom. Madbhavam refers to the supreme nature of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is Satchidananda Vigraha, that is, his form is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Our present body is not Satchidananda, it is Asat, not Sat. It is not eternal, it is perishable. It is not Chit, full of knowledge, but it is full of ignorance. We have no knowledge of the spiritual kingdom, nor do we even have perfect knowledge of this material world, where there are so many things unknown to us. The body is also Nirananda. Instead of being full of bliss, it is full of misery. All of the miseries we experience in the material world arise from the body, but one who leaves this body thinking of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at once attains a Satchidananda body. The process of quitting this body and getting another body in the material world is also organized. A man dies after it has been decided what form of body he will have in the next life. Higher authorities, not the living entity himself, make this decision. According to our activities, in this life we either rise or sink. This life is a preparation for the next life. If we can prepare therefore in this life to get promotion to the kingdom of God, then surely after quitting this material body, we will attain a spiritual body, just like the Lord's.